Imagine volunteering for a science experiment and waking up a week later questioning if reality even exists. Welcome to the 1960s, when scientists thought, hey, what if we just didn't sleep, and called it research. In one particularly infamous case, high school student Randy Gardner stayed awake for 11 days straight under supervision. 11. That's 264 hours of pure, caffeinated chaos. On day 2, he couldn't focus. By day 4, he was hallucinating, mistaking street signs for humans and thinking he was an athlete when he could barely walk straight. On day 10, he was basically a confused bag of bones powered by adrenaline and spite. So what did we learn from this reckless science fair from hell? Apparently your brain doesn't just get tired, it breaks. Sleep deprivation hijacks your frontal lobe, the part responsible for decision making, and basically throws it out the window. Your brain starts generating dreamlike activity while you're awake. That's right, your mind says, if you won't give me REM, I'll make it myself. After this and similar studies, researchers concluded that sleep isn't just rest, it's a biological reboot button. Skip it long enough and your body starts turning reality into a fever dream. Basically, your brain is a toddler, and if you don't give it nap time, it will punish you by turning the world into a haunted house. Once upon a horrifying time in 1939, a group of orphans in Iowa became test subjects in what sounds like the plot of a very illegal movie. Researchers were trying to figure out what caused stuttering, nature or nurture. Their bright idea? Tell half the kids they spoke perfectly, and tell the other half they were awful at it. Guess what happened? The kids told they spoke fine, went on their merry way. The others, who were told they were bad, actually developed speech problems, real, lasting stutters. Congratulations, science, you invented trauma. The experiment, later dubbed the Monster Study, was so ethically horrifying that it was buried for decades, but it revealed something profound. Words shape the brain. The way you're spoken to, especially when young, can literally rewire your neural patterns. Praise and criticism aren't just feelings, they're brain programming. So yeah, next time someone says sticks and stones, you can remind them that psychological damage has a research paper and an archive number. 1970s, psychologist Bruce Alexander looked at the grim reality of addiction research. Most experiments showed rats pressing a lever to self-administer drugs until they literally dropped dead. Depressing, right? But Alexander noticed something odd. These rats were always isolated in tiny metal boxes, basically the rat version of solitary confinement. So he decided to build Rat Park, a rat utopia with tunnels, toys, friends, and food. When given a choice between drugged water and regular water, the happy rats chose the normal stuff. But the lonely caged rats, they went full Breaking Bad. The implication was massive. Addiction wasn't just about chemicals, it was about connection. Isolation made brains crave escape. Social comfort made them resist it. Humans aren't that different. Give someone purpose and support, and the chemical trap loses its grip. So next time someone preaches, just say no, you can counter with, just say Rat Park. Because sometimes the cure isn't detox, it's friendship and a hamster wheel. What happens when you lock a bunch of college kids in a basement and tell half of them they're gods? Nothing good. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo created a mock prison to study authority and behavior. It lasted 6 days. It was supposed to last 2 weeks. The guards quickly turned sadistic, inventing punishments and degrading the prisoners. The prisoners broke down mentally. Zimbardo himself got so caught up in the role of warden that he ignored the ethical dumpster fire happening under his nose. The big takeaway, roles shape reality. Give someone power and their morality starts doing gymnastics. The Stanford prison experiment showed how easily normal people can become monsters when handed a badge and zero accountability. It's one of those studies that makes you want to lock your own ego in a box just to be safe. Basically, it proved that humans aren't inherently good or evil. We're just one name tag away from chaos. Picture this. A calm man in a lab coat asks you to shock a stranger with increasing voltage every time they mess up a memory test. You hear screams. You hesitate. The man insists, the experiment requires that you continue. And most people did. This was psychologist Stanley Milgram's infamous 1961 obedience experiment. Participants thought they were helping with a study on learning, but really, it was a test of human morality under authority. The learner wasn't actually being shocked, it was an actor, but the participants didn't know that. Over 65% of them went all the way up to danger, severe shock, just because a man in a white coat told them to. It was horrifying, fascinating, and deeply human. The experiment revealed that obedience can override empathy, not because people are evil, but because we're wired to defer to perceived authority. Our brains evolved in hierarchies where following orders often meant survival. That instinct doesn't disappear just because someone hands you an electrode and a clipboard. The worst part? Most participants were emotionally shattered afterward. They weren't sociopaths, they were just people. Regular people who proved that evil doesn't need villains, it just needs rules. Basically, your moral compass might have GPS, but it still reroutes for lab coats. You've seen the cute videos, kids sitting in front of a marshmallow, told they'll get two if they can wait 15 minutes without eating the first one. It's adorable. It's psychology, and it's also kind of a lie. The original marshmallow test, done in the 1970s by Walter Mischel, claimed that kids who resisted temptation grew up to be more successful, better grades, better jobs, better everything. Delayed gratification was supposedly the secret source of success. But decades later, researchers revisited the data and realized something crucial. It wasn't just about willpower, it was about trust. The kids who waited often came from stable environments, homes where adults kept promises. The ones who didn't wait, they weren't impulsive, they just knew that sometimes promises don't get kept. So what looked like self-control was actually realistic expectations. You can't delay gratification if life's taught you that the marshmallow might disappear the second you blink. It's not about how strong you are, it's about whether your world is trustworthy enough to make waiting worth it. Basically, the marshmallow test was less about dessert and more about despair in disguise. It's 1961 again, and we're back to psychologists giving kids ethically questionable toys. In this case, a large inflatable clown called a Bobo doll. Children watched adults either punching and kicking the doll or playing with it gently. Then they were left alone. Guess what happened next? Every kid who saw the adults go full WWE on Bobo immediately did the same, hitting, yelling, even inventing new ways to attack it. The others, they played normally. But Bandura's Bobo doll experiment proved something terrifyingly simple. We learn by watching. Behavior isn't born, it's copied. Aggression, kindness, sarcasm, all of it spreads like emotional Wi-Fi. Bandura called it observational learning. The rest of us just call it monkey see, monkey do. And it's not limited to kids. Adults absorb social cues the same way, just with better vocabulary and worse decision making. So the next time someone claims video games or social media have no effect on behavior, remember the Bobo doll who suffered for science and got repeatedly drop-kicked by toddlers in the name of psychology. Basically, humans are just slightly more sophisticated parrots. We mimic chaos and call it culture. In the 1920s, psychologists were basically winging it. Case in point, John B. Watson and Rosalie Rayner, who thought it would be fun to see if they could condition fear into a baby. The setup? They gave little Albert a fluffy white rat to play with. Adorable, right? Then, every time the baby touched the rat, they slammed a metal bar behind him, making a horrific noise. After a few rounds of this emotional torture, little Albert started crying not just at rats, but at anything white and fluffy, rabbits, fur coats, Santa Claus beards. Basically, Watson turned one baby into a walking anxiety disorder. What did science gain from this horror show? The understanding of classical conditioning, the same psychological principle that makes dogs drool at bells and humans flinch at notification sounds. Emotions, it turns out, can be learned. Fear isn't always natural, it's taught through associations. Watson wanted to prove that humans are blank slates, that you could mold anyone into anything with the right stimuli. Instead, he accidentally proved that trauma has a long shelf life. Little Albert's real identity was never conclusively confirmed, but records suggest he grew up with lifelong fear responses. So yeah, congrats to science for discovering anxiety, by inventing it. Basically, your brain is just a big Pavlovian dog with trust issues. Everyone's heard of the trolley problem. One lever, one runaway train, and a choice between saving 5 people or 1. It's a moral thought experiment, but in the early 2000s, neuroscientists decided to see what happens when you simulate it for real. Using brain scans, they asked participants to imagine making those impossible moral decisions. The results? When the trolley scenario was impersonal, like flipping a switch, logic centers lit up. But when it involved physically pushing someone to their death, the emotional centers exploded. Basically, your brain runs morality on 2 processes, logic and empathy, and they hate each other. The experiment showed that ethics isn't consistent, it's situational. You might think you'd make a rational choice, but once emotion enters the scene, your moral math goes haywire. That's why real-world ethics never feel clean. It's not good versus evil. It's two competing brain systems screaming at each other in moral surround sound. So next time you can't decide between telling the truth or sparing someone's feelings, just remember, your brain is stuck in a permanent trolley problem with no brakes. Basically, we're all philosophers, but with the emotional stability of a vending machine. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, and honestly, it kind of was. In the 1960s, a New York adoption agency secretly separated identical twins at birth for a decades-long psychological experiment. The goal? To study nature versus nurture, without telling anyone, not even the adoptive parents. Each twin was placed in a different type of home, rich, poor, strict, permissive, and psychologists would secretly visit them for routine checkups, observing how their personalities diverged or aligned. The study stayed hidden until decades later when some of the twins accidentally found each other as adults. The results? Uncanny similarities. Even raised apart, the twins shared bizarre habits, same food preferences, same mannerisms, even same career choices. Genetics clearly had power, but the emotional fallout was devastating. The subjects felt robbed of family, of truth, of choice. When the story broke, the scientific community was horrified. The study was never fully published, and most records remain sealed to this day. It proved something profound and unsettling. Yes, your environment shapes you, but your biology has a script of its own. And sometimes, the people studying that script forget they're writing over real lives. Basically, science peeked too far behind the curtain and found humanity staring back.